All right, we're diving into a career path that's like the silent hero of today's world. ICT Network Technician. You've sent over a ton of stuff from RoleCatcher.com, career guides, interview tips, really the works. And I have to say, I'm ready to unpack all of it, all the secrets to success in this techie world.
Yeah, it's not just about, fixing printers, though people might think that. We're talking about the backbone of how everything runs these days, businesses, even our homes, like it's huge.
Okay, so what you're saying is, when my wifey's down and I'm freaking out, it's the ICT network technician who saves the day. They're like the superheroes of keeping us all connected.
Yeah.
But looking at these role catcher guides, it's fascinating how much more there is to it than, I don't know, just plugging things in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's problem solving. But like on another level, think about it. Any network issue could have like 100 different causes, right?
Yeah.
So an ICT network technician needs to be a bit of a detective,
Right.
analyzing what's going wrong, isolating the problem, then actually fixing it.
So you're not just following a script, you're thinking critically in the moment. Which makes a lot of sense because technology changes so fast. In fact, these role catcher guides highlighted something I hadn't even considered, software-defined networking, or SDN. Have you seen that impacting the role yet?
Huge. It's huge. And it's only going to get bigger, for sure. SDN is basically making networks more flexible, programmable, but all using software. It's like taking those, old clunky hardware systems and giving them a shot of like Silicon Valley magic.
Okay, so less about physically rewiring things and more about like mastering the software that controls the whole network. It has to demand a whole different skill set.
It does. And that's actually why these role catcher resources, they put so much emphasis not just on those hard skills, but what they call soft skills, which honestly get overlooked a lot. Being able to explain a complex SDN configuration to someone who can barely like set up their Wi-Fi, that's gold right there.
Yeah, patience must be a virtue in this field for sure.
Yeah.
It reminds me of something we see in a lot of tech roles these days, though. It's not enough to just be a tech whiz. You have to be able to communicate, to collaborate, even like empathize with the users, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And nowhere is that more important than in the actual work environment of an ICT network technician.
Yeah.
We're not always talking about some cushy office here. You could be in a bustling data center, surrounded by servers, or even working remotely, troubleshooting from afar.
Data centers sound intense. Are we talking those like massive futuristic looking rooms with like rows and rows of servers humming away?
Exactly. And the role catcher stuff even talks about how important edge computing is becoming. So instead of all the data being processed in one central data center, it's being pushed out to the edge, closer to the user.
Okay, so instead of just one big data center, you've got smaller ones popping up everywhere, maybe even in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
But how does that impact like the day-to-day of an ICT network technician? It seems like it would make things way more complex.
Oh, it does. It does. Now you're not just managing one centralized network. You might be responsible for multiple locations all over the place, and they all have to work together seamlessly. It means more troubleshooting, more coordination, and you really need to understand these distributed systems at a deep level.
So it's like instead of taking care of one big house, you're suddenly responsible for a whole neighborhood of like interconnected smart homes.
And each one with its own quirks and, its own little complexities, which is why, and you'll notice this as we go through these role catcher guides, they keep coming back to this idea. Lifelong learning is essential in this field.
Lifelong learning, huh? I like the sound of that. But really, it makes sense with technology changing so fast. How does someone even keep up, especially if they're just starting out as an IC2 network technician?
Yeah.
The role catcher guides mentioned certifications, saying those are really important.
Oh, they are. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, I understand networking, right? But a certification, that's like proof, It shows employers you actually know your stuff.
It's like a badge of honor from the tech universe or something. But there are so many certifications out there. RoleCatcher specifically mentioned CompTIA Network Plus and Cisco CCNA. What makes those stand out?
Think of those as like your foundation. CompTIA Network Plus is vendor neutral, which means it covers, general networking stuff that applies to any system. Cisco CCNA, on the other hand, that one goes deep into Cisco technologies, which are everywhere in big networks, like in companies.
Gotcha. So Network Plus for a broad understanding, and CCNA if you really want to focus on Cisco systems, kind of like choosing your, I don't know, your martial arts style. But then RoleCatcher mentioned even more specialized certifications, right?
Exactly, yeah. As you move up in your career, you might like specialize in something, maybe cybersecurity or cloud computing or even just wireless networking. And each of those has its own like path of certifications to show you're an expert in that specific thing.
Okay, so let's say I've got all the certifications, I'm feeling good, but how do I actually get a job? Like that first ICT network technician job. Experience seems super important, but how do you get experience if no one will hire you without it? It's a catch-22.
Yeah, it's tough, for sure. But RoleCatcher, they had some good advice on this. Internships, for example, those are great. A really good way to get that real-world experience while you're still learning. They also talked about co-op programs where you're like going to school and then working, getting paid all at the same time.
Those sound amazing, but not everyone can do that, I guess. RoleCatcher also mentioned something called a home lab, which, I'll be honest, made me think of science experiments, not IT.
Right, I get it. But in this case, a home lab is like your own little data center, you know? You can get like used equipment online for pretty cheap, and then you basically build your own network.
So instead of just reading about how to set up a firewall, you're actually doing it, like testing it out, maybe even trying to hack into it yourself.
Exactly. It's the best way to learn, hands-on, and it shows employers that you're not afraid to like get your hands dirty, that you're not just all theory.
It's like having your own little tech dojo.
Hmm.
And even if you do have a job, I bet having a home lab would be awesome for like keeping your skills sharp, trying out new stuff, right?
Oh, totally. That's the thing about being a good ICT network technician. It's all about always learning, always wanting to improve. Speaking of which, let's talk about job interviews, something RoleCatcher didn't shy away from at all.
Oh yeah, the interview. What kind of crazy questions can you expect in an ICT network technician interview?
Well, you'll definitely get the usual questions, about your background, what you want to do with your career, that kind of thing. But they'll also want to know how much you actually know, like your technical knowledge and how good you are at solving problems. RoleCatcher had a whole bunch of potential interview questions, and some of them were really tough.
Give me a hard one then.
Okay, imagine this. You're in your dream interview for this ICT network technician job. And the interviewer says, "Tell me about a time you had to deal with a really complex network problem. How did you figure it out? What happened?"
Wow, okay, so not just a hypothetical question, they want a real-life example.
Yeah.
That could definitely throw someone off if they weren't ready.
Exactly. And that's where RoleCatcher's advice is so helpful. They say you should have a few, like, stories ready to go, about times when you solved a real problem from your own experience.
Stories. That's smart. People remember stories, for sure. So instead of just saying, I'm good at troubleshooting, you could tell them about that time you saved the day when the whole office network went down.
Yes. Paint a picture with your words.
Hmm.
Describe the chaos, everyone freaking out, the pressure you are under, and then, like, walk them through how you figured it out step by step, showing them you know your stuff and can think clearly even when things are crazy.
And then, of course, the ending, you fix the problem, everyone's happy, you're the hero.
Exactly. And that's just one example. RoleCatcher talks about how to answer all sorts of interview questions, technical ones and behavioral ones, too. They even get into those AI-powered interview tools.
AI interview prep.
Yeah.
Okay, now that sounds kind of scary. Is that like robots grilling you with tech questions?
Not robots exactly, but close. These AI tools, they analyze how you answer questions, common interview questions, and then they give you feedback on what you said, how you said it, even your body language.
So it's like having a personal interview coach, but powered by AI.
Exactly. It's crazy how technology is changing everything, even how we prepare for job interviews.
AI interview coaches. Wild. RoleCatcher really does seem to have thought of everything to help someone, figure out this career path. But before we wrap up, I want to zoom out a bit. Big picture. What does the future actually look like for an ICT network technician?
It's a good question, and RoleCatcher actually, they paint a pretty exciting picture. Basically, as technology keeps advancing, which it shows no signs of slowing down, the need for people who really understand networks, that's only going to increase.
Makes sense. I mean, everything relies on networks these days. My phone, my fridge, you name it.
Exactly. And it's not just about keeping those networks running, though that's obviously important. It's also about security, making sure everything is safe, and then adapting to new tech as it comes out, like 5G, the Internet of Things, all of that.
So you're not just future-proofing your career, you're like future-proofing how we connect to the world, everything. Speaking of future-proofing, one thing that stuck out to me from the RoleCatcher guides was how much they emphasized continuous learning. And not just for people who are new to this, but for experienced folks too.
Yeah, 100%. The days of like getting one certification and then you're good to go, those are over. If you want to stay on top of your game, you have to keep learning, keep up with the latest stuff.
It's like the tech version of publish or perisher, but but what does that actually look like? Like, how do you keep learning once you're already working as an ICT network technician?
Well, you could go for those advanced certifications, the ones we talked about earlier,
Mhm.
or you could go to conferences. There are tons of them, or even just, read blogs, listen to podcasts, stuff like that. The important thing is to be curious, always be willing to learn something new, and never stop asking, what's next?
I love that. A thirst for knowledge, a passion for technology, those seem like the real keys to being successful in this field.
Couldn't agree more. It's not just a job, it's a constantly evolving, dynamic field. Tons of opportunities if you're willing to put in the work.
And to think all this came from one deep dive into RoleCatcher's resources.
Mm.
Amazing. So anyone listening who's even a little bit interested in ICT network technicians, do yourself a favor and check out RoleCatcher.com. They have everything you could possibly need. Detailed guides, interview tips, even insights into what's coming next in the field and why continuous learning is so crucial.
It really is a treasure trove of information,
Yeah.
all in one place, easy to use.
Exactly. And hey, who knows, maybe one day we'll be doing a deep dive on your career journey as an ICT network technician. But until then, keep those networks humming. Thanks for joining us for this behind-the-scenes look at the digital world.
Until next time.